Hello and welcome to the Agile Planet podcast. My name is Mandar Kulkarni and I am the host of this podcast. I will be interviewing the Agile experts from all over the world, taking the pulse of the planet Agile. Hope you enjoy it. Thank you for joining. Today, we have a guest coming to us from London. He is an agile coach and his name is Sriharsha. Sriharsha is also a blogger and podcaster, and he will talk more about it as we go along while talking with him. And with that, I welcome Sriharsha to the Agile Planet podcast. Sriharsha, welcome.
Thank you, Mandar. Thank you. Hello, all. Hello to all the listeners here. I'm Sri Harsha, known as Shri. In fact, I'm a great admirer of podcasts, and I think this is a great opportunity for us to kind of stay in touch, stay connected with what we do as on a daily basis. With close to 20 years of IT experience and almost a decade in Agile, I call myself an Agile caretaker than calling myself an Agile coach or a Scrum Master. The only reason being, I try to get into the client's shoes and try to help them to be agile rather than do agile. We'll talk about this more over the conversations in next few minutes, but I've had opportunities to work with banking, financial services, insurance sectors, and I've tasted a few flavors over this period of 8 to 9 years, and I'd love to kind of share some insights with you all today. As Mandar said, I am an active agile blogger too, and of course you can find my blogs on www.agileamigo.com. Now, besides these, what I do is do some voluntary work with the certifying bodies or the agile bodies like Scrum Alliance, Agile Alliance, and others. Very recent feather in my cap is I have been chosen as one of the European gathering team members, for the Europe geography to kind of put up global Scrum gatherings within the Europe continent. So I'm also a co-founder of a non-profit group called Agile Practitioners Group of India, which is APGI. Of course, that's again situated and located in a city called Pune in India. Of course, we conduct a lot of conferences, meetups on an annual basis, quarterly basis, monthly basis now, considering the situation. And that's a little bit of a voluntary work which I do. And I hold a few certifications within Scrum Alliance and Global Scrum Institute. Really, really excited to be a part of this podcast today. And I thank Mandar for this opportunity again. And let's get crack on.
Sure. Thank you so much, sir. It's a great background and great information. Some of the points even I was not aware of, even if I know you for a few years. So my little bit segue from there is, with all this big background, large number of activities, let's little bit zoom in
Mm-hmm.
what your current situation is. Situation in the sense, what I want to know is, where are you located right now? What type of company or industry you are working on? What is your role? If you can give us some idea about that ecosystem.
Absolutely. So at the moment, I live in a very small, beautiful town on east of England called Norwich, which is about 150 miles from London. So essentially, this is where I was working with a client, a big insurance giant in the UK, and as an agile coach, I was working there. And coincidentally, about a couple of weeks ago, I've moved my client. In fact, the clients have changed now. I've taken up a new assignment, and now I've gone into serving banking clients. Again, a big UK banker, and I've been deputed there as an agile coach or a scrum master or whatever we want to call it as. But essentially, my portfolio or something which I'm responsible for is to transform the account or the client space into agile ways of working and thinking, or rather changing the mindset from any traditional ways of working to new ways of working or agile ways of working. So that is something which I'm at the moment. I'm still based in Norwich because of the global pandemic, and of course I cannot move anywhere else other than staying at home. But slowly we will. I'll have to move up north. That's where the banking client is, and when I say north, it would be a beautiful country called Scotland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you will be moving to Scotland once the post-corona period emerges.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay. So looks like your majority of your background is from financial, banking, insurance kind of sectors. Is that the right thing? Okay.
No, absolutely. You're right.
And there you work as an independent consultant, or are you part of some organization's full-time workforce?
Yeah, so I am a part of a big organization where I am part of their community of practice or center of excellence team. So what they do is to depute consultants or people like me to different accounts which is affiliated with the organization, where we provide service to them in terms of consultancy, in terms of help, in terms of coaching, in terms of helping them embrace changes, helping them stay at the top in the competitive market at the moment. So so I work for an MNC which is India based, and of course I'm deputed in the UK right now.
Okay, great. So let's do some more ground level understanding about the work that you are doing. You said that you are working with banking and all these industries, and the interesting point that you mentioned was being agile. So let's talk about your idea of being agile, how you promote being agile in the workspace or the ecosystem where you are working on.
Absolutely. So you've asked me a question which possibly will take an hour or two for me to really answer that. However, let me kind of keep it very crisp in answering this question, or at least guiding our listeners to a path where we all try to not just do agile, be agile. In quotes, I really mean it, because everybody will do agile. Just because when people talk about agile, they say, okay, we are conducting our daily scrum meeting. Yes, we are agile. So I fail to understand that bit, because whenever they start stating that particular stuff, that is where their journey ends, because that is not agile. You will just have to start that professionally and personally as well. So for example, if I'll have to quote my own example, I have Kanban boards set up at home. So when I say Kanban boards set up at home, it is not just for me to manage my stuff. It is to manage my family's work items, if I would want to call it that way. So we manage, including my 10-year-old, we manage our work, say his homework, his homeschooling, my wife's purchasing something, some shopping, and of course me doing dishes, very important, and many other stuff. We put it on Kanban board and we track that every week. We retrospect, you believe it or not, we retrospect every Sunday, and then we take those actions and reflect and adjust for the next consecutive week. So what I'm trying to essentially say or come at is, agile is not just about you do something at your workplace. It is something that you imbibe into your life, which means you have to be agile to try and eliminate any kind of waste from the system. And that, as for me, is being agile and not just doing agile.
Very well said. Very well said, Shersha. I must admire you and your family as well for following the Kanban board at home, for doing, and special thanks to you for giving an importance to doing dishes, because that's such an important thing, and you can show your excellence in any activity like doing dishes. So thank you, and really admire you and your family for doing that. That's perfectly right way of thinking, that in your day-to-day life, in your personal life, when you start using the concepts of agile, then only you are really being agile, and then it starts reflecting in your work. So now, coming to the workplace that we want to talk about, you are asking people to become agile in their day-to-day lives as well. As far as the following agile in the workplace is concerned, how do you guide people? Do you start with formal training? Do you start with informal training? How do you expect them to start their journey when you are their coach or guide or servant leader? What are your ways of making people start their journey on agile?
It's a great question again. So I'll give you a live example here so that people can start relating that to it more rather than being just bookish. So in 2015, I was deployed or deputed into a bank again, again, the largest bank in Africa or South Africa. So I was flown down to Johannesburg and was asked to transform this bank. Okay. And the bank had about 130 employees who were working and developing their software. So that's the situation where I went there, of course, with a roadmap of what needs to be done, etc. However, I did not follow the roadmap because the first thing when I went into the bank, what I realized is there is a lot of things that I need to understand first, rather than just going with a few prescriptions and points to state 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You do all these 5 points and you're agile. Off you go. I don't think it's going to work that way. So what I did personally was to sit there with each and every associate for some time, understand the ground reality. So when I say understand the ground reality, what is the kind of frequency that you're going to provide your value to your customer? What is the frequency of seeking feedback from your customer? So all these points, I kind of noted about 3 to 4 weeks time I took in order to sit with these associate, leadership, management, different levels to understand what agile means to them or what is the current work means to them. So after which, the second step, what I did was to slowly start introducing formal trainings in terms of certifications or in terms of just getting them to embrace a new way of working theoretically first. When I say theoretically first, again, I wouldn't really flow through the Scrum Guide, 19 pages Scrum Guide and say, hey, you guys are Scrum Masters now. No, it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. We had practical games and scenarios incorporated within their training modules to make them understand, because I had the age varying from 25-ish. You believe it or not, I had a person who was 78 years old who was still sitting and coding COBOL in the bank. So it was not easy for me or any consultant to really come and change people's mindset like this, because anybody who are less than 40 years, easy to adapt for changes. People who have been coding almost my age or more than that, I don't think they will be easily adaptable to change. So this
Certainly.
is the first thing which I did, and eventually we tried and put a roadmap and asked them to start baselining their stuff, what they were currently measured on, and then subsequently every quarter we started measuring their maturity. So this is a small take which I wanted to quote when it comes to the first step for anybody to start their journey.
Sure, sure. So now you have handled such a wide range, and again, I must say that I have not handled that wide range from 25 to 72 or 78. So it's a huge amount of different flavors of how people you deal with. Now, let me use this opportunity or this situation to ask you the type of resistances that you might have received in this journey of making them transition from their whatever there was original thought process to the agile thought process, and what are the ways with which you have tried to convince them or tried to I should say dissolve their resistance so that they can join your thought process, they can become your allies than remaining your enemies?
Sure. First thing, I would like to start with a statement called Agile is not a destination and it is a journey. We all know that it definitely is not a destination where, we start performing or standing up in our daily scrum calls and finish our scrum calls and do a couple of retrospectives, and then we call it as an agile organization, and then we move on. Unfortunately, it is not that simple. It may be easy to understand, but for you to implement that, it is going to take some time. Why did I quote this particular thing? Is because it is related to what you asked me. When it comes to the challenges, when it comes to the resistance, it was fairly easy for me to help people who were less than 40, who were just about college age, who finished their college and got straight into their jobs, and people who have just gone into their work streams, etc., for about 8 to 10 years, etc. Those guys, it was easy to change because they hadn't seen much of waterfall or any legacy ways of doing things. So for them, it was very easy to adapt to the new ways of working, be it training, be it showing them the sample size, etc. But the sample size of the data in terms of how effective they can be, if I have to quote a specific metric, we did the cycle time. So this was a bank, and obviously we tried to. The whole thing was driven through priorities and SLAs around the tickets that they used to get. So obviously, for people who are of highly experienced, highly qualified, extremely competent in their job, in their skill, you had to show them the data. So obviously, the first cadence, if I were to be doing a Kanban there, I would call it more a cadence or a set of a time box rather than calling it sprints. I would start showing them the data. If you were to be doing the way you used to do for years, you took 4 weeks to resolve a P4 ticket, a priority 4 ticket. Versus, I've taken this small sample size. I'm working with a set of 4 or 5 team members who have been working on the same P4 tickets, and they hammered it down in 2 weeks or less. Now, that difference with data, if I start to present these folks who have actually seen that, it was kind of a light bulb moment for them. Oh, is it so? Why did I have to spend a lot of time when I knew these were the things, when I knew the bottlenecks, when I had bottlenecks, I had other team members to jump on it, and they could see through the work item moving from left to right. I didn't know about this. So it was kind of a self-realization moment for them. And this is how, one of the examples where they started accepting the change, looking at the data, looking at the reality, and possibly could see the benefits out of it.
Absolutely. Great example. Because data is what, as we say, the numbers don't lie. And when you are showing them the numbers and related to their work and the way with which somebody else has done and what you are doing, that automatically tells them what they need to learn, provided the person is open-minded and he really wants to improve himself. So
Sure.
that's a great example. Uh, and this is what we do at a team level to convince them to do it better. Now let's move our focus from team level, which is
Mhm.
kind of a bottoms up, the bottom of bottoms up part, and start at a higher level. What my personal experience tells me that as you go higher in the organizational hierarchy, people know about agile and people want to do agile, but perhaps they have not really invested themselves much to really go into understanding into what agile will do for me. Is it really for me, or is it just a buzzword that I want to bring in? What is your thought process regarding that? What are your experiences of how executive management or leadership or decision making body, whatever we want to call it, their way of looking at agile and how to make them understand the real ground reality of what agile is going to tell them, give them?
Absolutely. So again, if I'll have to start answering this question by quoting an example,
Mm-hmm.
in a typical agile scenario, in a typical agile organization where the team is kind of doing Scrum in order to deliver customer value or business value. Um, so your manager or somebody from the higher up, they come back to you as a scrum master or any kind of a team leader or any such person, and they say, okay, we understand you guys are doing scrum, everything is working well, etc., etc. But I want to see a status report in a beautiful Excel sheet or a PowerPoint presentation every weekend or every
Mm.
Friday before you leave. Now, that mindset itself is a beginning of the end, if I may call it, because
Mm.
as soon as you start expecting these kind of reports and stuff, what you're not realizing as a leader is you're increasing somebody's work in terms of increasing the documentation, which is not necessary at this point. And he or she who is designated to coach the team, he or she is designated to bring the team onto agile ways of working, they will not be given enough sufficient time to do so, because they will have
Mm.
100 reports from you, which you have asked. They will have to start preparing those reports and feed that back to you every Friday. So this is a classic mindset where agile is not going to make its way through. So this is a example where I would have gone in as a consultant or whatever you may want to call it as, and I would have said, okay, why do you need to see those reports? If you want to give take it up to your manager or your leader, why don't you come and take part in our meetings, in the team
Mm-hmm.
meetings? So when you start doing that, of course, I understand if it's a one person handling 20 teams, it may be very difficult,
Yeah.
in terms of scalability, in terms of his or her time split between those 20 teams being a part of those ceremonies and events. But if it's a small team, if you're really looking at about 4 teams, what stops you in going and being present in their meetings so that
Mm-hmm.
your collaboration is done, visibility is there, you have transparency, and most importantly, Mandar, this is something which I'd like to stress to all the listeners. By a leader being present in the meetings, what you're essentially doing is to build or foster the trust between
Sure.
the team and yourselves. Now that is your first taste of success. Whether
Mm-hmm.
you want to go agile or no, that's secondary. As long as you have the trust between your team and yourselves, you and your team can go great heights. Now that
Mm-hmm.
that is something which I would possibly say as a solution for that example which I quoted, saying
Yeah.
start collaborating with your team more often. So when you start collaborating, what are you essentially doing? You're cutting down that, you're breaking that wall, and you're making it transparent. You're making it visible, which means you're also cutting down that hierarchy which you have laid out in the organization, saying you are one among the team. We all are developers. So which means you are developing something to satisfy your customer, while your frontline engineer is developing something to satisfy his customer. So we all, including your CEO to the frontline engineers, we all are developers. That's how I'd like to say. And of course, this is a very a nice story which I would not want to quote now, but there's a very nice story which was again narrated by one of our agilists across the community. So that is where he tries to bring in that concept or analogy of bees and how bees work together to satisfy one particular goal. Likewise, we as organization, we will work towards one particular goal of satisfying our customer, regardless of whether it's a CEO, whether it's your facility person, whether it's your infrastructure management group, whether it's your frontline developer or a tester. We all are developers. So slowly with these steps, what you're essentially trying to do is to bring agility into your organization. So from a leadership perspective, you can start showing them this kind of changes that can happen and how it matters in terms of satisfaction score. We all understand customer satisfaction score is very important in an agile scenario. I personally feel team satisfaction score is equally important, because we don't work with resources, we work with humans. So when you're working with humans, team satisfaction, how happy they are they dissatisfied with something? I, as a leader, how can I try and remove those impediments for them? How can I do that? So that will be a key for a leader.
Absolutely. And again, I'm so glad that you brought up this point, that everybody in the world is almost saying that customer is the king and we should make customer happy and we should bend backwards to make the customer happy. The point I sometimes fail to understand, that you are expecting your team members, your employees, to bend backwards to make a customer happy. What are you doing to bend backwards to make your employees happy? Because in my opinion, unless the employees are happy, how they will do that bending backwards to make the customer happy? And perhaps nobody or very few organizations, I would say, give that focus to make their team's happiness, or as you call it, the team satisfaction index. Absolutely important. It's a great thought. And I'm really glad that you said that. And I really believe that we align on that. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's talk a little bit tactical things, right? As we have seen in last few years, the market is flooded with various types of agile frameworks, right? From the simple Scrum, Kanban to SAFe, which is considered as a pretty large and important or higher end framework. What are your experiences regarding various frameworks? Which one works? Which one doesn't work? Or which one works where? And what would you say about your overall experience? How would you like to share your experiences about the frameworks that you have used or you have understood about it?
Sure. Now, reflecting, I'm sure you would have gone through the 14th State of Agile report survey, which came out very recently from version 1. And based on that, we look at different methodologies and different frameworks that are implemented across the globe, and you still see between 54 to 57% Scrum holds the key there, and rest others will be split. And to my surprise, you still have about 5% people still state that they don't know what framework or methodology they use, but they still think they are agile. So which it's not really a surprise, but if you see with the organizations I've worked with, the clients I've worked, whenever they want to get on the agile journey, by default, they go into Scrum. Now, that's the biggest mistake which they do, because I keep telling people, agile is not equal to Scrum. When you just say we want to go agile, we want to transform our organization into agile, that wouldn't default you to go into Scrum. And again, if I will have to quote another example, the same bank which I was talking to you about, they assumed that Scrum is the right way to do things. Now, 3 questions which I wanted to ask them, and which I'll still ask people when they say, I want to do Scrum versus XP versus Kanban versus anything. How frequent is your delivery? How frequent are you putting something into production or putting something to your customer's lap.
Sure.
How frequent are you collaborating with your customer? And which in turn means how frequent are you seeking the feedback so that you can get your feedback loop up and try and inspect and adapt. Now, if you do not have changing requirements, because I know it's a regulatory project, I know I will have to deliver it in next 3 months, I know I will not I don't have any change of requirements from my client, why do you need Scrum? And they will not involve for the next 3 months because they would have given you those changes which they need and they've given you a deadline. So even if you want to get back to waterfall, please do it as long as you finish that on time. Do not do or go into Scrum just for the sake of doing Agile. So that is one basic thing which I want to let our listeners know. And second thing is, as I said, anything that you think needs frequent feedback, and if you think your requirements change every now and then, very frequently based on the market trend or whatever the product owner brings into your teams, and only then, and when you start delivering something which maybe in 1 week or 4 weeks time, whatever you want to do it, as long as you're delivering something as a business value or something that can bring return of investment for your customer, then use Scrum. Otherwise, there are many other ways in terms of application maintenance, for example. Of course, wide used application development will still use Scrum, and I don't have any complaints there. But when people from application maintenance framework, ticketing system, priority driven, development, bug fixing scenario, they just go ahead and start Scrum, and which I believe is an overkill of a framework. You're killing it because you want to you're using it. You're not really getting great benefits out of it because the way it is designed, you have a lot of logic behind it. You have a lot of reasoning behind why you have those many items, artifacts, and meetings within that Scrum framework. And if you're not using that, why do you use Scrum? Start using different other simpler methods which can get the job done for you rather than sticking to a framework. So I've seen a mix of few methodologies and frameworks in terms of Scrum. I've seen engineering companies exclusively getting into their extreme programming habits in terms of coding standards, simple design, and pair programming. So, extremely good in those kind of, engineering stuff. And they pass it on to another service provider for testing and stuff. So in that case, your XP practices will really work well. And if it's an application development scenario, then obviously Scrum is the right fit, depending on how frequent you seek feedback from your customer and how frequent you deliver business value.
Sure. Let's a little bit extend this to the scaling frameworks. There is a LeSS, there is a Scrum at Scale, there is SAFe, and newly emerged disciplined Agile. Would you like to share something from that perspective of which scaling frameworks do you find useful and how and why?
Yeah. So disciplined Agile delivery was, of course, it was in early 2013s, 14s, it came in. And of course, now I believe PMI has taken over and stuff. But before that, it was just a standalone DAD. But yeah, in terms of SAFe, again, my personal recommendation would be when people want to start using SAFe, they wouldn't realize that if they want to scale for a one team kind of a network, if you want to go, say, scale up to 4 or 5, you're still scaling, but not to the extent of using SAFe. So many people will do that mistake of bringing in scale because heavy net framework that is. And when you're saying heavy, it involves additional roles. It involves a lot of costs. It involves a lot of customizations that you need to do. And if you do not have about, say, 50 to 80 and plus, 50 plus Scrum teams who are working on a single product, I don't see the reason for your investment, huge investment, bringing in ARTs, bringing in RTEs as additional roles into your organization. If you have very smaller teams, there are lighter framework. There are absolutely, you can still run the show by Scrum of Scrums. You believe it or not, we've had Scrum of Scrums as a scaling model. Of course, this was before Nexus, where we started just about having Scrum of Scrum Masters, representations from each team, and start to understand the dependencies and really have a conceptual sprint plan. Don't get me wrong, I'm not behind any Excel sheets or Gantt charts here. I'm just a simple sprint conceptual plan where if team A is dependent on team B to start their work, so team B will possibly take their work in sprint number 1, and the same work is carried out by team A in sprint number 2. Now, where would you plot these? You plot this in a simple Excel sheet, which should not consume a lot of time. And I would use that as a conceptual sprint plan, which will be evolving and emerging. So as simple as these tools have helped me in the past to manage scaling. So if you think this is kind of too basic and it possibly will not work for me and I need something which is labeled scaling, then you possibly can use Nexus. You can use many others, as you rightly said, Less is around, DAD is around, and of course SAFe. But a little hint, when you're using SAFe or bringing SAFe into your network, just ensure that you have 50 plus odd teams working on a single product. Otherwise, it possibly will not really, again, as I said, you're overkilling a framework.
Right. There should be enough justification in terms of size, complexity, number of team members to bring something like SAFe in. Absolutely, I agree. Absolutely, I agree with you. Okay. You gave a hint about a very interesting story about how bees work relating to Agile, and for me, it was an intriguing point. So, can you share that story with us?
Absolutely. So with all credits given to Agile Maven, he is the person who actually narrated this story in 2015 in one of the meetups in Pune, where we all went on a Saturday morning, sulking because it was a weekend and we were asked to go. And of course, I was a co-host there, and we did host that particular meetup as part of APGI. And when we talked about, he opened this forum by asking this question: how many developers are there in this room? A few put their hands up, a few did not. So that's when he took us all through this narrative journey towards how a life of a honeybee is. So obviously, when you talk about honeybees, of course, we all know that there are 3 kinds of bees. One is a droid bee, another one is a queen bee, and another one is a worker bee. So when you have these 3 bees, obviously queen would not really come out of hive, and the other 2 types of bees will go out, fetch the nectar, and then they kind of store that in the hive. So eventually, or sadly, would be consumed by a human anyways. But their primary objective is to get everything together on a common goal. All 3 bees will have a common goal: to get the nectar and store the nectar, for their stuff. That would be the analogy of a honey bee. Now, if you bring the same logic into your organization, your facility management group or your infrastructure management group, who provide you the laptops, the keyboard, etc., they are helping you in order for you to work and satisfy your customer, which essentially means to say they are also trying to satisfy the customer. For them, you are the customer. For you, somebody else is the customer. Likewise, a CEO of a company will be tasked to do a few responsibilities or take care of a few responsibilities to satisfy his or her customer. So likewise, we all are still working towards one common goal, which is satisfied customer. So if anybody asks you tomorrow, are you a developer? Just because you're not coding, just because you have not had your hands on .NET or Java, it doesn't really stop you being a developer. You are still a developer developing something for a common goal. Now,
Sure.
that is the kind of interrelation which he
Analogy.
gave, which I was really flattened hearing this story. And I keep narrating this story with all credits given to him every session of mine, because this is where the first step of mindset change happens. So as soon as you finish narrating the story, if you pop the same question back again, how many of us are developers in this room after hearing the story? Everyone will put their hand up. And when everyone puts their hand up, that is when we start saying, now this is what we talk about mindset change. From today, we expect you to start changing different people's mindsets, to start evangelizing these agile ways of working. So this is how we kind of connect the story to the reality of working.
Perfect. I love the story, and that makes perfect sense because people learn from the stories, and this is a story which really makes very nice analogy relationship between agile teams and us. Okay, so I have a little bit diversion and want to ask you a couple of questions related to your volunteering work, Scrum Alliance, Agile Alliance, and APGI. APGI, I'm pretty familiar with because I have been there one of the speakers in a few years back in Pune, and loved that experience because it allowed me to go back to my hometown where I literally was born and brought up and started my career. And going there back as an invited speaker was one of the highest points in my life. And APGI gave me an opportunity. So I'm always thankful to APGI and now to you as a part of the founder. So tell us a little bit about what APGI does and, of course, your other activities as well.
Absolutely. So again, in 2015, three like-minded people, including me, we kind of got together in another Agile meetup in Pune again, where we were a part of that meetup. And while the coffee sessions can do many things. This is one of them. So in the coffee sessions, while networking, we said all three of us are in Pune, and we know the kind of agile knowledge we have in the city, and our primary focus was to kind of make Pune slowly an agile capital of India. Now, this was our primary objective when we said, okay, now how will we make that? We had many groups at that point, and not to name any group, but there was some kind of a commercial benefit attached to those groups. So we wanted to be unique because our objective was to spread agile awareness within the city and across the country. So with this in mind, we three got together and we said, we are practitioners. We are definitely agile practitioners, and we would want to kind of focus at the moment the whole country. And how will we do it? We use Pune as a hub, and we start spreading the news and spreading the agile awareness. So that is how APGI was born in 2015, and after which 2016 onwards we started hosting and curating our annual conferences. Now, annual conferences, we have had 200, 240, 250 plus participants coming across the globe. And like yourselves, and it was such an honor to have you as our guest speaker, and you speak about stuff, and there were a lot of takeaways from that as well. Likewise, there were many people came across the globe from the globe, and then they started talking about agile in our conferences, and that inspired a lot of people within India, and they went back with their good practices, tips, etc. from these greats, eminent speakers, etc. So that was one success factor, and after which we started conducting meetups to constantly keep the lights on, and not just about conducting annual conferences, having these meetings on, etc. And of course, now with this kind of situation, we are planning, of course, the talks are in the background, that we will want to have an e-event, which obviously would not allow. Now government is slowly kind of relaxing the stuff, but initially it was scheduled in the month of April, and unfortunately the whole pandemic did not allow us to conduct our 2020 conference, but we still want to make it in 2020 as part of e-event or virtual event, so that we keep the lights on and we start spreading the awareness more and more. So that's my stint with APGI. It still continues. It's still my baby, and we still go on with that. And of course, with Scrum Alliance, again, we had a close association there as well for Scrum Gathering Lisbon, which is something which I'm a part of the organizing group, where we put up this whole conference, go to the location, look at the location venue, see how many people can really fit in. We're really talking about 1,500 footsteps in. So it's a big, massive conference. So again, I was honored to really work with you there as part of a review team. You were a part of my team, fortunately, because these cross learnings will really help us, professionally as well and personally as well, knowing each other and stuff. So I've had a lot of volunteering opportunities, likewise, being a reviewer, being a module creator for one of their CSM modules, and of course now as a European Gathering team member, I serve Scrum Alliance in terms of putting their conference up and stuff.
Great.
Yeah. So apart from that, as I was mentioning, there's one other stuff which I wanted to say on Agile Amigo, which is my own stuff, which I do as part of giving it back to community. Again, a free of charge session which I do monthly, where I have a team of 4 of us who are in the UK right now, like-minded people. Again, what we do is to curate the content, and we do this monthly sessions of introducing people into the journey of Agile. So be it starting from what is waterfall, how waterfall used to happen, how did Agile evolve, what is the definition of Agile. I start from there, because not many people know what Agile. As soon as you say Agile, they go into software industry. I say keep software industry aside, talk about the word or definition of Agile. Now that is where things come, because as the great Mahatma Gandhi said, speed is good, but only when you're traveling in the right direction. Otherwise, speed is nothing for you, right?
Absolutely.
So Agile, that's how I start my sessions, and I start giving them the introduction of what methodologies and framework are used, and we go a little deep into Scrum because that's widely used at the moment, and then we touch upon a few certification aspects as well. So this is something which I do, and as latest as yesterday, we had a panel talk in terms of how do we effectively work in within remote teams now that the pandemic is there, and that's inevitable. You got to move on. The life has to move on. So how do you work through that, and different retrospective techniques for Scrum Masters and facilitators to go back and start implementing those techniques straight away. Yeah, these are the few other things which I do apart from my day job to keep my passion in Agile live and kicking.
Sure. Great. Thanks a lot. And I really would like to be part of your activity whenever there is a right opportunity, and you can definitely get in touch with me. I would like to get in touch with you whatever way I can. And again, APGI, if you guys are going to do online events, then I'll be more than willing to do whatever help I can sitting here in US, because traveling is kind of completely out. But organizing, managing, whatever, back-end work, whatever, it's a complete volunteer work I would like to do. So let me know what you think I can contribute to. Fantastic. But coming back to our session, thank you so much. We really have talked a lot of things, and I'm sure everybody who is listening has enjoyed your sharing of these ideas and experiences. I wanted to again say that it was a great opportunity for me to know much more about you, other than our initial introduction. And I believe we'll keep on talking with each other, collaborating with each other, and take it further.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I'd like to thank you, Mandar, because this is definitely a great opportunity for me to talk to your listeners in terms of sharing my experiences and insights. Hopefully, that should benefit. As I usually kind of close my stuff by saying again, reiterating, Agile is just not a destination. If you're doing your daily Scrum meetings well, that doesn't really put you in the tag or label called Agile. I have specifically written a blog in my Agile Amigo website. You can go and read through those blogs where I say Agile is not just about attending or conducting daily Scrum meetings. It is beyond that. Look beyond daily Scrum meetings. So, as I said, it's not a destination. It is a journey. We all learn. I'm sure Mandar, even today, after years of years and years of his struggle in Agile, he's still learning, continuously learning even today, like how he is. I am learning even today in terms of new ways of working, in terms of how can we continuously improve, what is the reflection and what can I adjust in future for my own self. And as I said, personal agility is something which I have taken it too personal, as much as the usage of Kanban boards, which you have heard from me earlier, and to the extent of my son saying the homework is not in progress, it's in to do. Should I put it in progress, or should I put it in done because I'm already done with today's homework? So those kind of fights will happen at home in my home.
I love it.
But anyways, thank you for the opportunity, Mandar. It was great speaking to you today.
You're most welcome. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Great. Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed this episode. Please like, share, and subscribe to this podcast and to this YouTube channel. Thank you.